Well, hello, greetings to everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join this little bit of Hebrew as we go through the book of Daniel. And we're in chapter 9 and picking up with verse 24. Um, Again, this is now the interpretation by this angelic being of the vision dream that Daniel had. And this verse from verse 24 through 27, the end of the chapter, is really the core of where so much of teaching on Bible prophecy is based upon. Many different interpretations of what this means. Um, and again, my purpose here is not to reinvent anything or proclaim anything from my viewpoint that I'm a scholarly or have any special insight into end time prophecy. But the value here for me is to see how the Christian interpretation of these verses um, compares to the uh, Jewish teaching from the sages that has existed prior to um, the onslaught of Christianity. And how did the Jewish sages look at these verses and interpret them versus how we as Christians look at them and have applied meanings that some are similar, but some are quite different. And so um, let's take a look at this text here as we go into verse 24. Again, I'm reading from the JPS version, which is a Jewish Bible Society, Biblical Publishing Society. And so we're going to start with theirs first. So it says, 70 weeks are decreed upon thy people. Again, we have to think about the time frame here. In the time when this was written, was a week the same as what we think of a week? Were days the same? Calendars were different. Again, trying to determine, is a week the same as a longer period of time? Is it an actual, seven 24-hour days back to back? Or does it have some um, future spiritual meaning, and does it equate into different periods of time? This gets very challenging, um, especially when you go into the New Testament and you read one verse in, I believe it's the Apostle Peter, says that one day is with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. And there are many times in the scriptures where the term a day is used, and it's thought to equate to 1,000 days. And so this is all quite fertile valley, if you will, here for Bible prophecy. So here we have these 70 weeks decreed upon thy people and upon thy holy city, which we would believe is Jerusalem, which remember is in ruins because Daniel's in Babylon. And so the temple's in ruins, the city's in ruins, nothing is there. So as we read this, we look for these little nuggets talking about those things which talk about, is it happening now? Is it going to happen in the future? In Daniel's future, in a long time prophecy future? That's what we look for. So it says that they'll be upon the holy city to finish the transgression. Well, what transgression is this? To make an end of sin. Okay, is that an atonement? Is that a removal of sin from the earth? Um, and to forgive iniquity. Obviously, there's some redemption, forgiveness going on here to bring in everlasting righteousness. This sounds more like much of a futuristic time frame, not accomplishable on earth. Maybe yes, maybe no. And to seal the vision and the prophet, and to anoint the most holy place. This word anoint, um, here you can see it in the Hebrew, it's Mashiach. Some of you may remember that term. It's where the term Messiah comes from. And Mashiach or Messiah means anointed one. And so this is something that learning the Hebrew will give us a little bit different understanding, that is not a name, so to speak, because it's where the word Christ comes from, meaning the anointed one. The Hebrew is Mashiach, and it's where we get messianic from. So again, all of these overlap, but the word to anoint is Mashiach. And so know therefore and discern that from the going forth of the word to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem, okay, which hasn't happened yet. So he's prophesying that this will happen. And unto the one anointed, which again we look over here and we see the word Mashiach. So talking about this one who is anointed, and they're calling him a prince. Um, Nagir, Nagid to a prince shall be 7 weeks. So there's a period of time here that we have to try to discern how long of a time period this is. And then for 62 weeks, so this would be 32 weeks, I believe, three score. And so it shall be built again. It's not right because 20 the score is 20 years. So 62 weeks, it shall be built again, the broad place and the moat, and it'll be troublous times. And then there'll be another 62 weeks. And it talks about an anointed one. Again, looking over here in the Hebrew, it uses here the term Mashiach. Again, the anointed one will be cut off. Okay, we can read into that and be no more. And who is that talking about? And then we scroll down and it says, the people of the prince shall come and destroy the city. Okay, we know that Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD and the sanctuary was destroyed. And then it talks about the end being with a flood. Okay, that's okay. What kind of flood is that? Noah's type flood, something different. We'll take a look at that. And then when we get to there'll be wars and desolation are determined. And then verse 27 switches here again, and it says, he shall make a firm covenant with many for 1 week. Um, who is this talking about, and where is this going on? And for half of the week he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease. So we're going from the city was destroyed, sanctuary was destroyed, to verse 27, to where now there must be a city and there must be a temple because there's sacrifices being given there, but they will um, be ceased, and there'll be detestable things, appalling things, and things until it's just exterminated, and everything that's causing these appalling, horrible things will be done away with. Lots of symbolism, lots of things going in here that are very, very interesting. So before we dig into the Jewish portion of it, let's take a look at how Christians have kind of looked through this time frame. Um, I am not unearthing anything new and profound here. Went in and Googled Daniel 70 weeks. Up comes a overall overview. I read through it. It's pretty much aligns with everything that I have been taught through my decades of receiving Christian teaching. I didn't see anything that really jumps out and says, oh, this is out of order with other things that I've learned. So talks about a 490-year period of 70 weeks. So of course they're interpreting that these weeks fit into a year period. And of course, the years from a Jewish calendar are different than from the calendar we're currently using today. Um, Time recording was a very challenging endeavor back when they worked off a lunar calendar, as the Hebrew calendar does, and has to add in leap months, if you will, to compensate so that the um, times of spring and fall stay in similar months until the solar calendar was devised, which was 365 days. And then finally it was refined to add the quarter day and have the leap year, the leap day in February as we have. So, and this was all determined back in just during the time of the Renaissance, Middle Ages, where these calendar periods were realigned and refocused. And it's a fascinating type of history. But what it does is it creates uncertainty that the calendar we have does it really align with how God looks at timing? How does our calendar align with the Hebrew calendar, which I would think if I'm following Hebrew scriptures and Hebrew timing and Hebrew prophecies, um, I may want to pay more attention to the Hebrew calendar. What calendar does God use? Does he use ours, or does he use the Hebrew calendar, or does he have his own? So again, it's very more questions. So as we look through this, they feel it's divided into three segments of 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and 1 week. Um, and again, we know it's a time frame for God's redemptive plan for Israel, for Jerusalem. So is this something that's mainly targeted at the Jewish nation, at Israel? How do we, as non-Jews, Gentiles, living in the realm of relationship with God that we're in, how does this impact us? Are we just kind of on the outside looking in, or are we, going to be a part of this? So talks about these 62 weeks plus 7 weeks will come to the rebuilding of Jerusalem, from the rebuilding of Jerusalem to the coming of the Messiah. Of course, this is a Christian interpretation, takes that understanding of being cut off or killed, relating to Messiah being cut off and killed, which we can easily assigned to Jesus's ministry and his death, burial, and resurrection. And then the final 70th week, they feel is a 7-year period associated with the Great Tribulation, intense hardship and judgment. And there's all kinds of understandings or proponents of when is this Great Tribulation. You'll hear terms called pre-trib, mid-trib, post-tribulation. Um, and many proponents that have lots of backing on any of them. Um, again, it's we don't know what's going to happen until it happens, basically, and we just have to be ready for anything at any time. Is how I look at it. So we look at the accomplishments of these prophecy of the 70 weeks, and of course the fulfillment, going from a Christian standpoint, that Jesus is as the Messiah. And then what's also understood here is the difference for does the tribulation period, or does Daniel's weeks see the current church age? And that is, again, something that uh, Jewish people do not maybe see the church age in their entirety of understanding. Where the church age fits in. So it's just another whole amount of symbolism going on here as to, what's really happening, and uh, where does this fit in. So with that, we will go back to the um, understanding here as we go through this. From the Jewish viewpoint. And so we pick up on their commentary. And again, they talk about 70 weeks, 7 times 7 years, pretty much the same basis that the Christians did. Of course, this was all written after the fact, hundreds and thousands of years after Daniel, after um, even the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. That's where these commentaries were written. So they're looking back and they're saying, okay, there was a destruction of the first temple in the days of Zedekiah. Then there was the second temple from Babylonian exile, and then 420 years during which the second temple existed. So again, they acknowledge that it's cryptic, and but you will see that there are two ways to look at this. One is from more of a, we'll call it, practical standpoint, or more of a natural standpoint of what they saw happen historically. And then there is taking this historic and looking at whether there is a spiritual or revelatory, futuristic um, uh, take on this. And here's where you get into the lively discussions, if you will. There are those who are looking at more on the pragmatic side, saying, well, historically, this is who it's speaking to. These are the people it's speaking to. And yes, that can be a very adequate way of answering and feeling that this applies to just that particular instance. Then there are those who will say, no, it's speaking about a futuristic um, spiritual realm, messianic realm, a salvation, a restoration, and this is all to come in the future. And then, yeah, in reality, does it maybe fit both? Does it satisfy both conditions? And that's what we are somewhat left up to going through. So even here in the Jewish commentary, this time of everlasting righteousness, they were looking at it as an allusion to the Messianic era. I find that quite interesting because Judaism overall does not spend a lot of time um, delving into the Messianic era. And I think it's just because of Christianity and all of the issues that have arisen uh, between Christians and Jews. And, again, they want to be very, very cautious. And so that's what's somewhat interesting here. And so, as we move on in the commentary, talks about sealing, anointing, the holy place, the temple, and so what I want to go back to is this word that I thought was very interesting, and it's in verse 26. So, as we look through the commentary, they talk about Cyrus. You may have heard that name of Cyrus being brought in. Um, Many Messianic Christians or those that embrace Judaism and Christianity together have talked about Cyrus and that he was prophetic, and maybe there's another Cyrus today based upon leaders in our government. There's been some references there. Cyrus was not Jewish. He was a king, but he ended up doing some good things for the Jewish people, and that's why there's some uh, overlap of favoritism towards Cyrus, even though in reality he was not a very nice guy. He never embraced anything Jewish. He was a pagan, but he was able to do some favorable things for the Jewish people, I believe, as God kind of manipulating him and using him in God's master plan. Many times people are used and they don't even know they're being used. And so as we get to verse 26, it talks about a flood. And so that's what caught my interest here is what kind of flood is this and where is this flood come in? So here is the Bible Hub and verse 26, and it comes upon the word of for flood, and it is shetev, bashatev. So with a flood, the bait the be in the front here is the preposition meaning in, for, by, or with. So they translate it as with a shetef, a flood. But when we look up this word for shetev, it is not the same word as what's used in Noah's flood or in flooding of water. The first time it's used is in Job, it's used in Psalms, but it has more of a spiritual connotation to it, more of an outbursting or overflowing, not of water, but of something that is not of a water nature. So here they talk about an irresistible rush, an overwhelming force. And so it's something where God's power, it exceeds human power, and it's God's rule and God's spirit, God's presence coming in a way that kind of whooshes through. So maybe like a flood in essence of what it accomplishes, but not using the water. And so again, that's the beauty of being able to look at the original languages to discern the difference between a flood of water like Noah's flood and the flood that's promised here, because we would not expect a flood of Noah's type um, essence to ever come again, because the promise by God to Noah was that he would never flood the earth again, and there would never be loss of life and destruction from a flood. So I think that's enough for today, where we're going to stop, and we will pick up on this next week and continue to look at some very wonderful verses in the Hebrew text. So God bless you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye.